Hi, this video is about the theory of yoga. Yoga theory is a very big subject and has come from many sources. Philosophy and history are just a small but important part of that theory. Will this be good for me? This little sentence is what goes through our head with pretty much everything we do, mostly subconsciously. Does yoga have an answer or just more questions? First, we need to look at what we mean by good. Usually it means, will this bring me happiness, either now or in the long term, or preferably both? We're prepared to put up with a little suffering to get our cake. In the world of yoga, happiness is either temporary or not. We are quite aware of this and continually try to find non-temporary happiness, or at least something that will last a long time. Because temporary happiness is tinged with sadness, we undertake the practice of yoga to find some eternal happiness. There is, according to yoga philosophy, only one eternal. It gets called many names: Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, Atma. Sometimes all these names and concepts can distract us from actually feeling connected. So, connecting with this eternal is the same as eternal happiness. Hence, yoga is connection. So to find connection with your body and breath is the first step. We should remember two things. The body, mind, soul and breath are all connected. Trying to separate them is our downfall. The second thing to remember is when I say first step, you might think, oh, there are more steps and they just get harder. Well, for sure, yoga is hard sometimes, but the first step is just a step on an escalator. There's no going back. One of the first questions people ask is, where does yoga come from? How old is it? A fair amount of research and theory has gone on to try and find answers to these questions. We know yoga has come from India, and Indian borders have always been fluid. People have always travelled. Theories and practices have been carried by people from all over the world and changed over time, just like languages. So yoga is really a world thing. Even the concepts of asana and breath control. How can we say it started here or at this time? Someone somewhere figured that holding their breath had some benefit, apart from not drowning. And who first stretched or touched their toes? When did a physical practice come about? We may never know. But we do have to ask ourselves, why is, where and when yoga started important to us? Why do we need answers? Do these answers add to yoga or to our happiness? We're educated to always look for an answer, the right answer. But as most stories, movies and real life show, often there's no one answer that will fit everyone. We don't have a good handle on the history of yoga because of the lack of artifacts. We have some small engravings which may be interpreted as yoga, and we have some translations of old books. These old books are only books after some time. Indian culture values highly the ability to memorize words, songs and stories. For other cultures, the written word has a much higher value. Even the Devanagari script we see and use for Sanskrit today was only developed around 2,000 years ago. Sanskrit, the spoken language, is much older. The earliest we have is the Rig Veda, which is in Vedic Sanskrit, which differs from classical Sanskrit we may be used to. The Rig Veda was passed down orally for hundreds of years before it was written down. The earliest use of the word yoga that we have found is in the Katha Upanishad, which is part of the Vedic system. We don't have a firm date on its composition either, but approximately 2,500 years ago. The word yoga has many meanings in the dictionary, but this is the first time that it's used that goes to define yoga as we may know it. The translation goes something like this: yoga is control of the senses. It's quite a simple statement. It comes from a story in which a young man, Nachiketas, asked Death, in quite a few words, what's it all about? Nachiketas, just like ourselves, is looking for eternal happiness. To find that, Death becomes his teacher and instructs him to follow the path of yoga. Remember, yoga is both the path and the destination. But why would you want to control the senses? Do the senses not bring you pleasure? Of course they do, but they are likened to wild horses that drag our mind hither and thither. Rest assured, though, our senses are tameable over time. We can bring more focus to them in practice and then use that focus on other areas of our life. By not letting our senses get the better of our mind, we find space to connect not just to God, but to others, to nature, and ultimately to ourselves. So when you practice, the important elements are controlling your senses by control of your body and breath, asana and pranayama. But yoga isn't just what happens on the mat. Real yoga starts when we step off the mat, when we bring the clarity and calmness we have found on the mat into our everyday lives, our work, and most importantly, our relationships. But, and this is important, the idea of control is something we are drawn to, and it becomes a place of comfort. Yet the world is anything but controllable. So to a certain extent, we also need to be comfortable with the unknown, with the uncertainty of where our foot will land on this path of yoga. When we first start to learn yoga, often we are taught in a very mechanical and analytical way, as if our bodies and minds were machines. Our body is so much more than muscles and bones. By trying to force and reduce our body and mind to follow a mechanical, analytical trajectory, not only do we do it a disservice, we lose our trust in ourselves. We begin to close down and lose our freedom. Free your breath, free your mind, and free your heart. Thank you.